Eric, any announcements today?
Well, in honor of that great cinematic piece, Saturday the 14th, I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting the day after Friday the 13th.
Okay. That's it?
That's it. I'm getting more callous with my introductions, I guess. Everybody knows the drill by now. You don't have any new people.
Yeah, and again, all votes have to be by roll call. Okay, item 4 is corrections to the agenda or consent calendar.
Well, I'd like to ask the regular board meeting minutes September 12 to be discussed separately.
Okay, any others? Any other corrections or adjustments? Okay, hearing none. We'll pull that item. Comments from the audience? Anyone's welcome to speak on anything that's not on today's agenda. Eric, just let me know if a hand goes up.
Only member of the public is Carolyn Scott at this point.
Oh, hi, Carolyn. Well, I would call Terry Woodrow too.
Yes, yes. She's our supervisor, so she's special public.
She's a special public, yeah.
Distinct public.
Oh, that one too. Okay, next item is written comments from the public. I don't believe we had any in the packet today.
No.
Okay, we'll go to adoption of the consent calendar. This is for items B, approval of regular board meetings for October 10th. C, approve current consent for claims. And D, review receivables and shutoffs. Do I have a motion to adopt 7B, C, and D? Standish makes the motion. Is there a second to that?
Bob seconds.
Bob seconds it. In favor? Roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dorbrook, aye.
Okay. Okay, now we'll now discuss item 7A, and I just want to make a clarification here. This is not a discussion of the merits or lack thereof of the meter protection actions or policy. So that's not on the agenda. This is simply do the minutes as submitted accurately reflect what was the action of the board, which was giving direction to the staff at the September meeting on how to handle meter protection. And so is that accurate, or does Bertrand's proposed amendment, which is included, more accurately reflect the action taken? So go ahead, Bertrand.
Yeah, so first my general comment would be that we don't have a motion. When a motion is not described, we are not actually, I'm not sure how to say that. So I would prefer that we have motion literally described before we have to move on, so there is no discrepancy. At that specific motion for this September month, I actually abstained because I wanted to see the language. I had concern in some area. I'm not getting into it because this is not the topic today. But basically, I would have voted no to that motion if I had seen the literal description. I'm not saying that it's inaccurate per itself. I'm just saying it's lacking some element that are critical. You know, the devil's in the details, or the details in the devil, or whatever. So I really would like that we actually literally describe a motion before we are asked to vote for it. So in this case, I submitted a suggestion where we don't go in detail into how the meter risk tier is going to be implemented, and I'm comfortable with that. And that's basically my recommendation here. So if we need to have more than a page of details, I think that need to be first submitted to the board before we are asked to vote for it. So my request here is to remove the detailed description of the risk tier from the minute before we approve them. It's also consistent with the fact that was a preliminary discussion at that time. Since there were more discussion in the operation committee, there is also an ordinance that's going to be getting ready and going to be checked by the legal counsel. So I think in general, it's better to keep the minute for the official version of whatever topic we are talking about. So this was a working version that we have here in this minute for the risk description, and I think it should be removed.
Okay, thanks. Board members, what are your thoughts?
Well, I tend to agree. I think this was written after we discussed it.
Just compiled the staff report, what was said by staff, what was said by board into the minutes, which is what she's done as long as I've been here.
So you're saying this verbiage was presented in the staff report?
And discussed by the board. The tiers were created by the board
Okay.
during the meeting.
Well, then I withdraw my concern. I found this, like Bertrand, I found this sort of jumping in afterwards, but maybe I didn't focus as much as I should have on the staff report.
I did have Jess review the video twice just to make sure it was accurate based on all the discussions, which as
And I withdraw my concern.
Well, I keep my concern because, as I said, it's the draft. And we should not have draft in minutes because, as I said, you with all the good intention, Eric, I think there are some missing elements. I'm not going to go into that now because Eric said clearly we are not going to discuss the merit of this risk description. It's just it is a draft. It should not be in a motion if it's a draft.
Bob, Peter, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I was a little bit surprised to see it because it made it imply like we had, I thought we were having a discussion, so I'd be used to seeing minutes say the board discussed these elements. So it seemed a little bit, it seemed to imply a degree of specification that I thought was beyond our discussion. So I tend to agree with Bertrand, but I also don't want to make this a big issue either.
Peter?
No comments.
Okay. Well, so the only question here is, do the minutes reflect the action that the board took? And this should not be a subjective question. It's in the recording. And I don't think would be good. It's a slippery slope to say, well, we took an action, but at this point, we should be recording it somewhat differently from the action actually taken. So the question, and I did not go back and listen to it in detail at all. I mean, I just went back to see that there was a motion because that was an early question. So when this draft first came out before the October meeting, there was some detail in there that I know we had not discussed. And I suggested an amendment to the minutes to Jess and Eric. I believe they then went back and listened to the minutes carefully. I mean, to the recording, and they took out the detail that I said that I did not remember. So the question is a very objective question. Do the minutes reflect what's in the recording, regardless of anything else? And if the answer to that is yes, then the minutes should stand. If the answer is no, Bertrand's is fine. Again, I don't want to make a big deal out of this either, but as a practice, we should not be going back and altering minutes to conform to what we wish had been said or hadn't been said. We should just be faithful to the recording itself. So,
Yeah, what I would say is I don't think we should literally describe after the fact. It should be presented to the board before the fact, not after.
well, what happens often, and this is, and I think Terry would agree at the county level, it's happened on every board I've ever been on, whether it was a planning commission or this board, and that is that oftentimes there's a staff report, there's a draft ordinance, et cetera. There's discussion and there are amendments, and the motion is made based on the discussion and the proposed amendments. It's not all written out again and brought back to the next meeting. The motion is made there without all being articulated and written out and ready for review. That's just not the way it works. Sometimes an ordinance is completely there and there are no amendments, and then you have the full thing. So I'm not quite sure that from a process perspective, it's at all practical to do what you're suggesting.
Well, okay, let me rephrase it. It looks like actually every one of us been a bit surprised by the extent of what was included in this motion.
So
we had a discussion, and clearly, I think it went beyond what was the understanding of that motion. And
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand your point. So let's. The question before us is: do we accept Bertrand's proposed amendment? So, Peter, roll call. Oh, excuse me. That proposed amendment, just to be clear, is in his email. Says.
I can read it for you. It was the consensus of the board to affirm its commitment to existing policy and to implement the following 3-tier risk system for propane and electric meters requiring additional protection.
Okay, so that's the proposed amendment.
Yeah, and that would remove the detailed description that would come in future meetings.
Yes. So a yes vote would be, the minutes would be replaced with this language. A no vote would be to keep what's in the minutes currently. Okay, Peter, roll call.
Can
Rick,
I ask a question first?
Sure.
What email are you referring to?
This is in the packet.
It's on the screen.
It's on the screen. It was included in the packet.
Yeah.
Page 4 of the packet.
Oh.
And there is an ordinance coming?
Yes, so operations decided to have Shanahan draft a draft ordinance for operations to review, and then ultimately up to the board level based on the direction from the board at this September meeting.
Okay, Peter, roll call.
Rickert,
No.
O'Grady,
No.
Epstein,
Yes.
Perot,
Yes.
Dornbrook, no.
Okay, the minutes stand as written. Let's move on to item 9, items for board action. Fiscal year 2019-2020 audit, and welcome Olga and Kelly. Eric, who's going to?
I think I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Let's get
Stop share, so you should be able to share it now, Kelly.
okay.
Good morning, members of the board. It's good to be here with you. So short presentation on the results of our audit. It's a short slide deck. I'll go through some detail here. This was reported to the Finance Committee earlier this week as well. Kelly, if we can advance to the reports slide, thank you. We did issue several reports, all unmodified opinion on the financial statements of the district-wide financial statements, business activities and government activities, and its fiduciary fund. There's several components to the financial statements, as you know. The report was dated October 30th. In addition to the report, we issued the required management letter required by RUS. All the same content in there. There are no exceptions. There are several specific items that they asked us to report on based on our audit procedures. And if we find any exceptions during the audit, they asked us to include that as a description, of almost like a finding in a management letter, and there were no findings included in that letter. Because we performed the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we, in addition to the report on the financial statements, we issue a report on the internal control. And that report is clean as well. So all in all, clean report card for 2020 financial year.
Woohoo!
We go. It is something to
Sorry.
celebrate. Not to be taken for granted, that's for sure. All right, if we go to the required communications, just jump one more slide. Okay, these are the communications that we're required to provide to those charged with governance. In this case, it's the board, based on the results of our audit, because we think these are important things for you to know and carry out your responsibility as the board. So the audit was carried out according to our plan. There were no modifications to the plan. We do spend quite a bit of time planning our audit, making sure there's no surprises for us or for management when we come out to do the final field work. So everything went according to plan, no surprises. Significant accounting policies included in extensive footnotes to the financial statements. No significant changes to the financial footnotes. The policies are pretty much the same as they have been historically. The district did adopt 3 GASB statements that were required to be adopted this year. Not a significant impact from any of those. I'd say the biggest one is probably GASB 89, which goes away with capitalizing interest on capital projects. It wasn't a significant amount in the past, so this is prospective application. So starting in 2020 and going forward, that interest would be fully expensed every year rather than being capitalized to projects that are going on. So not, once again, not a significant impact. Accounting estimates are all the same that we have looked at in the past. These are balances that are derived based on management's knowledge of operations and history of different transactions, all very common to a utility. So pension and post-employment obligations there is probably the biggest estimate, but it is based on third-party review or third-party reports that we receive from the actuary and from the auditors of those plans that are CalPERS plans. We jump to the next slide. We didn't have any disagreements with management, and I think one thing I wanted to stress in particularly, the audit was done remotely entirely. We didn't come out, unfortunately, to Kirkwood. My team was very bummed. We do love coming out to Kirkwood, but we didn't get to do that this year. So, you know, that adds a little bit of a challenge, if you will, an additional layer of difficulty for getting information and for Kelly's team to provide all that information electronically for us. But everything went very well. There were no hiccups. And I think this is why Kelly is so excited that everything went so well, because it was an additional effort that her team had to put up with providing all the information. So, but everything went well. Potential effects of significant risk and exposures. You know, every business entity has certain risks that it's exposed to, whether it's legal claims or operational risks. Those that are significant would normally be disclosed in the footnotes to the financial statements. We do check with the legal counsel to make sure there's no exposure that we're missing on disclosing or evaluating as part of our audit. So the new item that you will see probably in every set of financial statements this year, if you ever look at any other besides Kirkwood, is that COVID-19 disclosure, which is included in footnote 19. Basically talks about the impact in the first well, the last 6 months of the fiscal year for Kirkwood, and certain uncertainties coming from that going forward. So that's a new language that has been included. We are required to report to you if there's any audit adjustments that have been posted, or if there is any adjustments that management decided to not reflect in the financial statements. And very good news, there is no proposed, or there's no posted audit adjustments. There's no findings that we identified that were reflected in the financial statements that were provided to us by management. And then the past audit adjustments, there were a few. We did agree with management that they weren't significant enough to necessarily change the financial statements in 2020. These will be corrected going forward. One particular item I wanted to bring to your attention is the restatement that is reflected in footnote 11, as well as an emphasis of the matter paragraph in the auditor's opinion. This relates to a mathematical error in the statement of cash flow in 2019 financial statements. There is a ending cash balance number that had a formula error and was incorrectly reflected in the financial statements, just in that one statement of cash flows, because the ending balance reflected in the statement of cash flows didn't agree to the balance sheet. But that's all described in footnote 11. I know there were some questions regarding that restatement. Is there any follow-up questions?
I guess, Olga, yeah, I raised the question. I didn't quite understand that. But I think I understand. I mean, what was in the balance sheet and what we see in our cash waterfalls every month was accurate, but it wasn't accurately reflected in the statement of cash flows.
Correctly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That one balance was just, there is a formula of how you get to that balance in that particular worksheet, and that formula had an error in it. But the balance sheet is correct and all the other statements are correct.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, if we go to the next slide. We always have internal control comments. It's just something that we do going extensively through the internal control process. These are tweaks to comments you probably have seen in the past. We found some exceptions in our testing in a work order process, so accumulation of certain costs into CIP projects and retirement of the assets. Not a significant errors that we found. Therefore, it's not a material weakness or anything else. It's just a recommendation going forward to shore up some controls and have secondary reviews performed. Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
Some new accounting standards. GASB has been extremely active and issued a lot of new standards, even actually in 2020. They must have been working from home because they had 7 new standards that they issued that we will have to implement going forward. These 2 are in particular maybe significant in the future. So 2021 and 2022, we'll be working with Kelly and her team for implementing. Every year I present to you the audited financial statements, and every year the question comes up, how do these relate to the statements that we receive as in the management report as year-end results? And there's always a little differences, and what I try to do here in the next couple of slides at a very, very high level, summary level, to in the left-hand column present the audited financial statement balances, and on the left or the middle column is the internal financial statements that were presented to you in the August meeting as June year-end results, and identify in the far right-hand column any differences. So the biggest difference in the balance sheet reporting was in the cash and investments section. And the reason for that is that the large cash balance of Melrose funds that are included in internal statements as part of the cash and investments in the audited financial statements are required to be presented as a fiduciary fund. So they're just in a separate statement in the back of the statement. So that's what's creating that big difference that looks significant, but really it's just a presentation. And then I think the other, just a couple of changes were in other current assets. There was a true up to a receivables reported by management after we received the trial balance, and a small capitalization of a transformer. So that's the difference on the balance sheet. On the liability side,
Sorry.
Just a second. You will see there's accounts payable and accrued and non-current liabilities. The difference there is a classification of current portion of debt. So where it's reported internally, it's just all non-current liabilities. In the financial statements, it's reclassified for the debt payments that are due within the next 12 months. That's reported as current liabilities. So that's the differences there. We'll go to the next slide. This is the income statement or statement of activities, if you will. And this is probably the more confusing one. I really tried to make a one-to-one comparison, and it's just really hard because of some of the allocations, internal allocations, as the way they're presented internally versus externally, as well as the tax revenues. So as you can see, on a line-by-line basis, it looks like there's a few big differences, but when you come to the very bottom, net income or loss, the difference is only $30,000. And that's the difference related to some post, the adjusting entries that management recorded later in the month. So everything else is really just a classification. For example, the big difference is interest expense, pension and OPEB expense and amortization that we include in the fund expenses, whether it's government funds or business funds, and internally they're just presented as one big line item. So you can see the balance that's in total.
Very helpful, Olga. Thank you for doing that.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, going back to my earlier comment, your financials we receive or the records we audited were very clean. What Kelly and her team provided to us for the audit was very, we didn't have any audit adjustments. They had some additional corrections that they caught internally and posted during the audit, but at the end of the day, the difference is minor. So this helps.
Thank you.
I think that concludes my presentation. So if there's any other questions, once again, big thank you to Kelly and her team and everyone at the district. I always mention that we talk to a lot of people at the district and try to go outside of just finance and talk to people in operations and so forth. And this year particularly was challenging because all of those conversations has to be set up and done over video, but still everybody was very responsive and very helpful to us. So
The feeling is mutual, Olga. It was, for not being here, I think everything went really smoothly, and Trevor is a pleasure to work with. So
thank you.
So
any
board
other
members,
questions?
Yeah, board members, are there any questions, or Carolyn on the phone? Okay, no
Seems to
questions
me
at
this
all.
may be the smoothest audit yet.
And Standish and Bob, this was reviewed at the finance committee?
Correct.
Yeah. All
It seems to me
A-OK.
this may be the smoothest audit yet. So maybe we should keep doing them virtually.
No. I don't. I think we all want to get back together at some point.
Okay.
Right. Thank you very much.
If there are no questions, thank you, Olga.
thank you, Olga.
Olga.
Well, I think,
Bye-bye.
is there a question?
No, just a thank you.
I think Bertrand has a question.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bertrand. Oh,
I had
sorry.
a question, but I was muted. On page 45, I kind of, if you could show that on the screen.
Eric, are you gonna? Okay.
Okay. So on page 45,
45 of the packet or 45 of the audit number?
I don't remember.
Is it the one at the very bottom or the one just below, above it?
It's above.
Is there page 45?
Well, no, not this one. The other one. So
Okay.
45. Yeah.
That's that one.
Yes.
There we
So
go.
here I have a question / comment. Here clearly we have 2 paragraphs on the district current asset, 2 paragraphs on the long-term debt, and 2 paragraphs on the total business type. So it looks like it's applying to 2 different entities, but it's not describing which is what. And I just wonder, so I was a bit lost at that stage, trying to understand where each of these paragraphs are applying to.
Oh, there you go.
Kelly, did you want to address that one?
I guess I'm not sure. I don't really understand the confusion, I guess. I just,
Okay, so
Oh, I see.
think-
I see what you're saying, Bertrand. So,
Thank you.
for example, so the middle 2 paragraphs, for example, says the district's long-term debt of business type activities decreased 1.7 million, et cetera.
it's describing 2 different years.
Well, yeah,
That's-
so that's the
that's-
answer. It's 2
it-
different years.
We have to include both
now I
years.
got it.
Yeah, it's 2 different years.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
So for the first one, it's clear, but the second one, it still look it's the same year. That's what confused me,
Gotcha.
because it says from June, it goes to June 30th, 2020 for both. It's probably June 2019 that should be there. For the
I
first
didn't
paragraph,
I didn't
Under-
think it was confusing at all. I thought it was totally clear.
It's changed from June 2019 to June 2020.
so that's 2 years.
Well, that's 1 year.
Correct. It's comparing the 2 years, 2-year ends, because the balance sheet we compare as of the end of the year. So as of June 2020 versus June 2019.
Okay, so that's what confused me. I mean, sometimes you are looking for 1 year, sometimes you are looking for 2 years, and I find it confusing. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was
That-
totally transparent. I mean, the first paragraph is a 1-year snapshot and the second paragraph is a 2-year snapshot.
Okay,
Both.
that's what I didn't got. Yes,
Okay, good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No hands raised, Eric?
No.
No?
Does the
Okay.
board approve the audit or accept the audit, or is it just informational?
Generally, you do.
Yeah, the board needs
Approve
to
it.
adopt it. It's I know
Right.
it's one of the requirements at USDA that the board adopts the audit.
Okay.
Unless
then,
there are any reservations, I'd be prepared to make a motion to accept and adopt the audit.
Please,
So moved.
is there a second to that motion? Well, I'll second that motion, Rickard. So Standish makes the motion, Rickard seconds. Peter, roll call.
Rickert,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
I
Dornbrook, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay. Well, great. Congratulations, Kelly. Thank you
Thank you.
very much,
Thank
Olga.
you, Olga.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly and Olga.
Okay, we move on to item 9B, finances. Kelly, you're still on.
I'm
You
still
go through-
on.
you go through 1, 2, 3, and 4. all at
Sure.
once.
So starting with the balance sheet on page 104, you'll notice total operating cash is better than planned by $295,000. I didn't have any other specific notes on the balance sheet. Unless there are any questions, I'll move on. Okay, moving on to the combined income statement on page 106. Operating revenues for the month of September were down from plan by $37,000. And as you can see, this is mainly due to the decrease in commercial revenue as compared to budget. Year to date, total revenues are down from plan by $51,000. But you can see $76,000 of that in commercial revenues, made up for by $56,000 in residential revenues that are better than planned through September. So considering the situation, I feel like we're in a pretty good spot for operating revenues, especially since a large portion of the variance in operating revenues has to do with the base rate calculation issue in the budget. So you will notice also there is a large variance in cost of goods sold, and this has to do with the correction to the diesel inventory at the powerhouse, which I'll get into more detail once we get to the electric fund. And so total operating for the month of September is better than planned by $187,000. Moving on to the general fund on page 107. You'll notice the large variance in contract services, and this is 100% due to the timing of the receipt of our invoices from Moss Adams for the audit. If you look out there to the year-to-date totals for contract services, you can see we're just slightly over plan by about $2,500. Moving on to water on page 110 of your packet. Operating revenues for the month of September were just about at plan, slightly under $334. Year-to-date operating revenues for water are just under plan by about $5,100. You will notice a large variance in contract services, and this is just due to an invoice from Wet Lab for iron and manganese testing that was not budgeted for. It was about $4,500, and that is noted on the budget variance sheet as well. Year-to-date operating expenses for water are better than planned by $37,000. Moving on to wastewater on page 111. Operating revenues for the month of September were down from plan by about $12,000. Year-to-date, we are down from plan by $27,000. But you can see really the difference there is just that base rate issue. You can see residential revenues basically net out the commercial revenue being under plan. So considering, I think with total operating for wastewater, we're better than plan by $53,000.
Kelly, do you have an estimate for how much money we'll make or lose this year in water and wastewater, or not?
I don't.
We're making progress.
We're definitely making progress, but
I think also the fact we held at zero growth on connections too also made this a little more conservative, which is why I think we're coming out a little bit better now in preparation for what's coming over the next 4 months.
I'm sorry, Eric, does that mean we had additional connections we didn't budget?
No,
we haven't had any.
no,
We haven't had any.
But
Okay.
historically, we've been budgeting 1% for as long as.
Yeah, right. Okay, I understand now. Thanks.
Okay. Moving on then to electric on page 113 of your packet. Operating revenues for the month of September were down from plan by $10,000. Year-to-date, we are up from plan by $1,800. Again, you can see that flip in commercial and residential revenues. And here you can see the variance in cost of goods sold. At the powerhouse, we didn't, during the month of September, I noticed that there was a difference in what was reading at the waste or at the powerhouse and diesel inventory to what we had actually been delivered to the plant. So Brandy had the guys actually dip the tank so that we could get the actual inventory of what was in the tanks at the diesel or at the powerhouse, and turned out we had a lot more diesel than what the gauge was reading. So we don't know when the gauge failed, but because of this correction, we had a credit to our cost of goods sold for diesel. So you can see that's why there's a credit balance in cost of goods sold this year. They have ordered a new gauge, and they've been dipping the tank for the last couple of months now to make sure that we have the correct read at the powerhouse for diesel inventory. So total operating for electric is up from plan by $89,000.
Great.
Moving on to propane on page 116 of your packet. Operating revenues for propane were down from plan by $14,000. Year to date, they are down from plan by $28,000. But again, you see the savings in cost of goods sold, because if we're not selling as much propane, obviously we don't have to buy as much. So year to date, total operating for propane is up from plan by $26,000. And finally, on page 117 of your packet, solid waste, you will note total operating is down from plan by $25,000. And you can see in operations and maintenance, we're definitely over what we had budgeted for by almost $21,000. And we've specifically mentioned it was due to the number of tips that we had in July and August with the increased population in Kirkwood. As compared to other years, we had a lot more garbage to throw away.
Yep.
Okay, any questions on income statements?
It's
It
amazing.
surprises me that we can spend $117,000 in snow removal through September without removing any snow, but I guess that's all preparation, right, Eric?
Yes. Equipment repair, labor, snow stakes, that sort of thing. Yes.
And we do start posting contract revenues in the month of October. So you'll see that in snow removal, it starts to work itself out because we actually start posting contract revenues. Okay. Any other questions on income statements? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on then to the October preliminary income statement. These are actual revenues for October. You can see they are down from plan by $35,000, mainly again due to commercial revenues. And year to date, operating revenues are down from plan by $87,000. Again, a large portion of that is due to that base rate calculation. And then also you can see commercial revenues are down from plan by $103,000, but residential is up from plan by $57,000. So any questions on October preliminaries?
So Kelly and Eric, Rick, Brandy, all of those who are up here all the time, are you seeing or hearing anything as far as the resort and preparation for opening? And I know there was a little bit of snowmaking going on, but do you have any sense of whether or not our shortfall on revenues, which is really only running at about, if you take out the base rate issue, about 2.5% shy, which isn't bad. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on whether that's going to continue to be okay, or I mean, basically, what's the resort doing?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a return to normal. The compressors came in last week. Unfortunately, Vail could not run them due to State Water Resources Control Board not releasing them to draw from Caples Lake yet, but they anticipate they should have that next week. So we should start seeing snowmaking everywhere else in the valley once they have that permission and the temperature is warm. So probably Thursday, I think, Brandy, is what we had heard from them last.
Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday.
And they've been making snow at Timber Creek solid for the last week. And we actually, that's a twofold revenue generator there. We get the revenue from the water at Timber Creek as well as the electricity that's used there. So,
Right. And I'm wondering if maybe Terry Woodrow could answer this, but is there anything at this point on the horizon that would change Alpine County's status in a way that would affect how the resort can operate vis-a-vis COVID?
I don't see that happening, even if we move back from tier yellow to orange. I don't see a problem there. It doesn't affect any restaurant stuff, and I don't see anything.
And the Board of
Okay.
Supervisors on Tuesday, Terry, is considering a resolution of support to Assemblyman Bigelow and Borgias, I believe.
Origin, yeah.
Yeah, regarding ski resorts and how the state is going to govern their operations. So,
Yeah. So, yeah, that's been a constant conversation among the ski industry and Board of Supervisors and public health officers right now.
Great. Okay, well, thanks. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Kelly on income statements? Okay,
Okay.
Kelly, you can proceed.
We'll move on then to cash flow on page 121. Total operating cash for October is at just about 2.1 million. And that is better than budget by $171,000. You can see December is still our low point, which it generally is every year, but still forecasted to be better than planned through the end of the year.
Great.
Okay, moving on to known budget variances. I updated the balances for solid waste and snow removal salaries and wages through September 30th. And the only new thing that was added was the wet lab iron and manganese testing at $4,500.
And these are all negative, right? Meaning bad.
Yes, it's a negative impact. Yes, correct. And that's all I have on financials, unless there are any other questions.
I would
Thank you,
throw
Kelly. Oh, go ahead.
variant negative just in case we experience a positive one.
Kelly, thank you so much.
Sure, no problem.
Good job. Okay, let's move on to item 9C, resolution 20-13, Russ Certificate of Authority. Oh, that's you too, Kelly. I
Yep,
guess.
this is just so that since Kim is no longer with the district, Tommy and I are now responsible for doing all of the Form 7 and Form 12 reporting to RUS. And so this is basically just giving us authority to be able to do that reporting, and something that's required by RUS for logging into their system. And so that's really all this is it's just a formality for Russ so that Tommy can start doing all of the things that Kim did, which I'm very happy about.
Okay, thank you. If there are any questions from the board on this one, if not, we'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 20-13.
So moved.
Second it.
That's Peter. And that's a second by Standish. So, so here's an example. Peter just said so move. He didn't go and read through the whole motion. Well, I just process wise, this is what often happens. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
But in
different.
this case, the motion is in print exact in the board.
Right. No, that's true.
Exactly.
I don't think that's fair.
That's true. No, I just, again, I'm just trying to clarify process. That's all. It's not trying to criticize. I'm just clarifying process. And it's true. This is as most resolutions or ordinances are, they're all written out in detail. And so we just refer in the motion to the resolution number. Okay, we have a motion by Peter and a second by Standish. A roll call, Peter?
Rickard,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Thornburg, aye. It's unanimous.
Great. We'll move on to item 9D, the biannual customer survey results.
So this has been, the full survey was already before the board, and then communications committee asked for comparison between the 2 years. So Jess prepared this comparison. You can read her summary there and all the details behind it. So I don't know if there's any questions or discussion the board wants to have, but it was just more of an informational item since COMCOM thought it was important for the board to look at the differences. But all in all, it was basically static, some up, some down, but minor movements either way.
Could you move to the snow removal one?
Or you know what page that is off the top of your head? Or I have so much stuff on my screen. Hold on, I have to move it because now it goes into the big thing. Snow removal.
132.
Thank you. This is for private driveways.
Okay, well, that's so I do note that in the extremely and very categories went from 79% down to 52% of the respondents. I think that's somewhat significant. And I don't know if we're digging into the whys of that. Well, let me ask that question. Is anyone digging into the whys of that?
No.
Are there any hypotheses as to why?
Well,
More
there's a
people in
bunch of
residence.
individual statements that people made, so you could read those and that would tell you.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And I think more people in residence. And perhaps unrealistic expectations as a result.
Mhm. So in staff's opinion, there's been no change in how the removal is done and the scope of the removals, et cetera, et cetera.
Last year was almost 100% green crew, so that may have had something to do with it. This year is definitely not, which is great. Almost all are returning or prior experience elsewhere staff, so that's been very helpful. Rick, I don't know if you want to add anything. Did Rick disappear? Oh no, there he is. Want to add anything?
I think you covered it nicely.
I would second that. We had several new employees in the snow removal last year that should be more efficient this year, resulting in global improvement operation.
Okay, so that is a good hypothesis then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
There was another snow removal one, Eric, just so I didn't skip over it.
Oh.
It's the HOA one. Just the extremely dissatisfied is greater than it was last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Not significant.
On the extremely and very satisfied front, it's not too much of a overall difference. A little bit. Okay, no, but I think that the experience of the crew is an important one, and that's a good hypothesis.
And this was, I think, the last one. Yeah. Oh, not the last one. There's two more. So I thought this one was very good, that people understand the residency notification a lot better than 2 years ago. So the unaware dropped by over 10%, which I think is significant, and the haven't signed up has dropped by 7%. So people are using the district website more. So that is helpful, I think, in a lot of ways in terms of they get notifications, they understand what's going on with snow removal. It's a better way to keep the customer informed of what we're doing daily. Randy does messages daily when we're doing snow removal. So I think that helps a lot too for awareness.
I agree.
And then
any other questions or comments?
Just the last one was the
oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I just want to make sure I don't skip any of the snow removal ones since you asked about it, but you can see that's again almost status quo. Between extremely to reasonable was relatively the same.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions or comments on this item? Thank you for the work that went into this and the report. Thank you to the Communications Committee for that. By the way, I think that the items in the newsletters that are coming out are terrific. And I think a lot of that comes from the survey. So thank you for that. Okay, speaking of communications, we'll move on to item E, which is Communications Policy 720. Eric?
So after this was kicked back by the board last time in October, Communications Committee met and incorporated the changes they thought were appropriate and have the revised version attached. So hopefully everyone's read it in detail when they had insomnia and we're all up to speed.
Are there, board, any questions or comments on this one?
Well, I just would ask Peter whether it's clear now, because he had some concerns. Hopefully.
No, I think I like it a lot better than the first draft.
Okay, well, thank you for identifying things. Appreciate that.
I only had one comment, and that's on page 140 of the packet under written communications. The second paragraph under written communications. Yeah, that one. So I don't really object to this, but I know that when I had, because I think I'm the one who brought this up, when I had my mind was that if it's more than 2 directors get a communication, just like with the Brown Act, if it's more than 2, then it should be public. If it's only 2 or 1, it doesn't necessarily have to be. I don't object to what's written here by any means.
I think actually you raise a really good point from a different perspective, Eric, and I'll tell you why. I think it should be more than 2. So let's say Carolyn and Scott is on operations, and she sends an email to the 2 directors, on you and Peter on operations, then we'd have to share that whole thing with the board, even though it's a committee function. I think this could lead to a lot of excess stuff that would all make ways to the board. So I would favor changing this to more than 2 directors for that reason. Otherwise, so we don't have issues with committee communications.
I agree. I think we just missed that spot. I think it was we wanted to follow the Brown Act on
Right.
this. I agree with you, Eric.
I agree too.
That's an oversight.
Okay.
So I would
Okay.
recommend that we change that to say that when more than 2 directors receive.
Okay, any other comments on this? If not, then entertain a motion to adopt policy, was it 720?
Correct.
As amended.
As amended.
I move adoption as amended.
I
Is there
second.
Okay, Bertrand second. So Bob makes the motion, Bertrand seconds, a roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye.
Thank you. And thank you to the Communications Committee for that one too. Item F, Resolution 2014, continuing service suspensions, penalties, and shutoffs during COVID-19.
So I wanted to bring this back to the board for two reasons. Well, one, we've had no one apply under this resolution and policy for relief. So I wanted to make that clear. We originally put a 60-day time limit on it, or if the government lifted it. The 60 days came and went, but we didn't have anyone requesting it. So I just wanted to bring it back to close that loop. So the 2 things that were changed are highlighted in yellow, which adds the whereas about the original motion in May. And it changes this from 60 days to 6 months from the date of this resolution, just because I don't see this going away in 6 months. And like I said, we've had 0 applications for relief under this policy.
Great. Okay, questions, comments from the board or public? If not, entertain a motion to adopt resolution 20-14.
So moved.
Standish
second.
moves. Bertrand seconds. Peter, roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dorbrick, aye. It's unanimous.
Great. Okay, move on to item G, performance reporting and aquifer levels. An update from Brandy.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Brandy.
So in your packet here, we have just the regular performance reporting, looking pretty normal for this time of year. October electric, we showed 417,000 kilowatt hours produced. Of that, a little over 36,600 at the powerhouse because of the PSPS outages. We had a 15% unidentified loss for the month of October, which we do generally see tick a little higher both this time of year and when we're running on generators. So I think that's pretty normal for this time of year. And you can see propane is back in the negative loss category at negative 11%. We're going to see much higher usage in the coming months. I expect to see that go back to near zero. For water, for production from our wells, we had 782,000 gallons. We metered 671,000 gallons, giving us a 12% unidentified loss for the month. We're running slightly higher than our goal for the year at 16%. But again, because we're going into higher use months, we should see that come back down. And then lastly, wastewater. Our influent meter at the plant measured 717,000 gallons coming in. Our actual metered, which is based on water meter reads in the valley, 645,000 gallons, leaving us with an 8% unidentified usage. That's at 15% for the year, which is better than in previous years. We'll continue to track that. I do have a report on aquifer levels, but before I go to that, are there any questions on the performance reporting section? Okay. Aquifer levels are in your packet also. You can see the average for the month of October is 139 feet at well 4.5. We ask Derek to take a look at the effects of snowmaking because, as Eric and Kelly both pointed out, they have been running snowmaking at Timber Creek pretty consistently for the last week or so. And that pulls from our water supply, from our aquifers. So we did take a look at that, and what we found, what Derek found, was that in generally speaking, their usage this year is about in line with previous years. We limit them to 100,000 gallons per day, and they've been averaging about 48,000 gallons per day for snowmaking. We do, in our agreement with them, have the ability to stop providing water if it's needed based on our aquifer levels. But what Derek found was that more so than snowmaking, the increase in valley occupancy is impacting our aquifer levels. So starting in March, occupancy in the valley has been much higher than normal, ranging from 80% increase over last year up to 205% increase over last year in October. So we have a lot more people in the valley consistently using water. And you can see that our, starting in mid-July, our aquifer levels have been slightly lower than we would expect. Not in any range of concern yet, just something that we're watching. So we're going to take a full report to the operations committee on this. We may limit snowmaking at Timber Creek if our aquifer levels drop below 140 feet. I just wanted to bring that to the board. We are watching it. We expect that it's going to get warm. They're going to get permission to run their snowmaking operations from Caples pretty soon. So likely by the time we look at this again, it will be a non-issue, but we are going to continue looking at it in case we need to do something here.
Randy, is there recharge that happens during winter, or does that really wait until spring?
We usually see a little bit of a recovery in the late summer, early fall before people come back in for the winter. And we're not seeing that quite as much this year. Usually from the July to November range, we see a slight uptick in aquifer levels. And this year it's been pretty steadily where we were. And that is all I have, unless there are any questions.
Okay, Brandy, thank you. Are there any questions?
I have a question somewhat related for the irrigation versus residential water or commercial water. What the percentage this year?
I don't track that monthly on the performance reporting, Bertrand, but I do have that information. I could get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Irrigation was quite small.
And we did have only 3 customers disconnect, or three connections disconnect so far.
Oh, to avoid the meter cost, you mean, Eric?
Yes, one
And the base rate.
HOA and 2
Base rate,
customers
yeah.
disconnected.
Okay.
Not quite the mass exodus that was predicted, but still.
Okay, Brandy, well, thank you. Move on to item H, sanitary sewer management plan audit.
Just want to correct one thing I said at operations. I thought this was a review of the plan. It actually is the audit and the plan together. Operations committee noted that one of the sanitary sewer overflows was not captured. That was due to this report being submitted in July and hadn't been updated before it went to ops. It has since been updated to include that overflow. And we have to do this every year. The board has to approve the audit. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Brandy. That's
No, that pretty much covers it.
Peter, do you want to say anything from the operations committee on this one?
I think basically we recommended approving it or adopting it. That's my recollection. You concur with that, Eric?
Yes, yes. And again, my only question then, and I think it was satisfactorily answered, but I'll just say what it was. It was partway through the audit, there's a statement that a few number of overflows, which I think were 3 or 4, was actually quite good, quite a good result. And I just was wondering, compared to what, and I think that Eric answered that question well, comparing us to other districts, the experiences they have and so on in terms of overflows. So, I mean, that was the only question I had on the audit. I'm glad that other one was added. Thank you for that.
I think our manhole lid project is starting to show results personally.
Yes. Yes.
the other thing which is germane to this discussion too, and echoes what Peter just said, but we did purchase new smoke testing equipment and a new camera. And through the use of both of those, we identified a separation crack break. We don't know exactly what it was. It was hard to see with the camera, but through the smoke testing, we identified an issue. We stuck the camera in there and could see there was something wrong. And so we went and dug it. And as they were digging it, they broke it, which we were going to remove it anyway. So we couldn't tell exactly what the issue was. But it looked to be an old clean out that was never connected to that was leaking. So we actually replaced a stick of pipe, so 14-foot section of sewer line near where this overflow was, by the way. We did determine there's a significant sag in the line, which, as I understand from Derek and Rick and Brandy, that's pretty well known in our system, which is a very bad thing. from a civil engineer's perspective. So I've identified a project to replace that entire line between those two manholes as one of our projects we'll be recommending to the board next year. But I just did want the board to know that your investment in the smoke machine and the jetter camera have paid dividends already in terms of savings to the district and identifying potential sources of I&I. So just wanted to add that to it.
Great, thanks. Okay, I will entertain a motion to, is this adopting or accepting? What's the proper word?
Let's adopt.
To adopt the KMPUD Sewer System Management Plan 2020 Audit Report.
So moved.
Peter moves. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Standish seconds. Roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Thornburg, aye.
Thank you. Okay, we go on to item 10, General Manager's Report.
No, we have termination. Item
sorry.
I.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Termination of emergency under Resolution 20-09, authorizing emergency repair work to the district powerhouse to remedy a broken pipe and or fitting and other work. Eric.
So briefly, it was fortunately a minor repair. So it was significantly better than what it could have been. In fact, it might have not even hit the contract threshold that we needed to bid on, which is also very good. So what needs to happen is the board needs to terminate the declaration of emergency to close the loop on this project. But we are repaired, we're up and running. Brandy's been doing copious testing, as you saw from the community notices. But everything is working well, and very, very, very glad we could get it done in a very busy construction season.
Yeah, good. Is there a motion to adopt resolution number 20-09?
No, it would be a
motion to terminate, to terminate resolution number 20-09.
So moved.
That's Peter. Is there a second?
Bob seconds.
Bob seconds. Roll call.
Rickard,
Aye.
O'Grady,
Aye.
Epstein,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Thornburg, aye.
Great. Now we move on to item 10, General Manager's Report.
Not a whole lot to report, just getting ready for the winter. I have attended quite a few, both CMUA and AQUA legislative and regulatory committees as they're getting ready for the regulatory season. There's quite a few things that will impact the district, from fleet management to CPUC/CEC change how they're doing business and working together. There's some issues that Bob is helping us work through as well that ties into this issue. But what we've understood from our lobbyists is that the legislature leadership has basically asked the legislators not to propose anything terribly controversial this year because of lack of ability for open meetings and face-to-face meetings and public participation. There's been general consensus that that is a reasonable request. I think it also came from the governor's office as well. So they're not anticipating any earth-shattering legislation this year, but they are keeping an eye on it. And that's really all I have.
Do you have any update on that iron manganese issue for the water supply?
Sure. Sorry, Standish made me laugh. We are working with our hydrogeologist on different solutions. We're dealing with the regulator on that, what we can and can't do. Their initial response is that we can't blend. Our hydrogeologist met with the district engineer relative to the recent water model study that he is finishing, which is very complex because of, quite frankly, just absolute atrocious as-built and record keeping from, the creation of the system by EID. It's just, we don't have all the information, so a lot of assumptions have to be made. The general consensus is that our all of our PRVs are not working properly and maybe causing issues. So that's something that we'll again be bringing back as a capital project to replace those pressure reducing valve stations. So the hydrogeologist is trying to get a handle on the system and to justify to the State Water Resources Control Board and Department of Drinking Water that we can do potentially blending. Hand my radio on off too, Brandy. That we could potentially do blending as a way of solving it. If they don't buy into that, we're going to have to purchase some sort of green sand filters to deal with the iron manganese issue. And what basically caused this is, you know, well 2, since I've been here, we've had a fecal coliform hit in well 2 every year, and I know that predated me as well. I directed staff to back off usage of well 2, and we've had no hits this year, so successful. The problem is we're now using wells 4 or 5 more, which is introducing a naturally occurring iron manganese issue from those wells. So that well 6 is going to become very, very important for the district. And again, another project we'll be recommending. I know we mothballed it on the current capital plan, but I don't think we can punt this one down the road in the future, especially if the residential demand stays high as it is and we have more year-round residents.
Great, thanks. Okay, any other questions of Eric for the general manager's report? If not, we move to the operations report.
Good morning, and I honestly don't have that much to share with you that hasn't already been spoken. But you know, it's that time of year where we're preparing for winter. Obviously, snow removal team is in place. We're actually looking. We hired completely a full team, but one of our operators decided to take a job somewhere else that pays more. So we're looking for one skilled operator, heavy equipment loader type operator to balance out our team or fill our team. But other than that, I mean, our staff is out there actively putting up snow stakes and preparing for winter. Currently, T4 is the only machine that's got a major issue, and our fleet mechanic, Tom, has been working on that. So as for fire department, unfortunately, we did not receive the SAFER grant that was for recruitment, retention, and training that we applied for jointly with Amador Fire Protection District, Willits, Pioneer Fire. As I maybe have mentioned before, part of the process of this grant was if we didn't get it this year, we'd reapply for next year. So we're in the process of figuring out how to tweak that grant slightly so we can rewrite it next year to hopefully receive that grant. And then finally, next week's a busy week. There's a Caltrans meeting to discuss highway operations. There's a EMS meeting with at Lake Valley with all the ski resorts to talk about the ski resort operations. And then there'll be another meeting with me and Vail Resorts to talk about snow removal. So again, we're just preparing for winter and look forward to hopefully a lot of snow.
Rick, how would you characterize the experience of our snow removal staff that's in place right now compared to last year?
I think we're really we're in a good place compared to last year. All our operators have had experience in Kirkwood removing snow. We brought back an operator from several years ago who is really going to be a great asset for us. So right now, I think we're looking better than we have before. And also the weather's cooperated. As you remember, last year, we had back-to-back storms right at the beginning, and it was really difficult to train operators and keep up with the volume of snow that was coming in. This year, you know, we've had one storm, and hopefully next week there'll be a second one. But again, I think we're in better shape than we have been in a long time, equipment-wise, operator-wise. And so we look forward to a good year.
Okay, good, thanks.
Rick, do you have an update on the hazard tree removal for the Off Valley line? Anything new yet?
All done.
Eric actually talked to our force, or yeah, Eric, you want to fill that one?
Yeah, we are all done. He's removed every tree. We will contract with Chips next year to get rid of the slash. I have a funny feeling this stuff will probably disappear to some extent, but we'll see what happens next year. The wood rats are very prevalent down there, so it'll disappear. One anomaly is that one of the trees that was identified, by the time I get out there, somebody else had already topped it. It was now lower than our lines, so it presented no risk to our line. So he did not take that tree down, which I concurred with that, and that was the right decision. It's getting more expensive based on what Forest Service is making us do. It was about $12,000 to take down the trees this year. Bear in mind that was 2 years worth of trees, so $6,000 for 2 years, where we were paying around $2,000 to $3,000 previously. So it's getting more expensive. Plus the chipping still is going to come in behind, and that's going to be very expensive as well. So we're going to need to start watching that in terms of budgeting and electric.
How many trees were removed?
33 was, I think,
Wow.
what was on our, what was approved by 33, 35, Brandy?
I think 33 was the approved number, yeah.
Do we share those costs with PG&E?
No. Yeah, we're only doing on the 34.5, and yeah, they don't share on the underbuild, although they did take down some trees around it on their own. We think that's who topped it.
What do you mean they don't share on the underbuild?
There's nothing in the IA that I'm aware of that requires them to do a cost sharing on tree removal. Did I miss something in there? I'll go back and look at it again, Bob, and read the TFA and the IA, but I don't recall there was anything in terms of cost sharing for maintenance of the line. The other thing is the forester, the licensed timber operator did request that next year that there be a preseason meeting between him, the forester, and Brandy. So Brandy's already working on scheduling that so he can hit the ground running and hopefully ramrod this through Forest Service quickly. So.
Great, thanks. Any other questions of Rick?
For operation, I'd like to know if there is a status report on the retrofit meter enclosure program. So how many have actually complied to the new requirement, and where are we on this topic?
I don't think we have a report ready to go on that.
Okay, no, you don't have any idea of how many actually high risk meters are going to be a concern for this winter?
We have some documents, but we don't have anything ready to go today on that. We can definitely bring
Okay.
that back next meeting.
Or through operations.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on operations? If not, we'll go to standing committee reports. Standish, Finance.
The only topics that we haven't discussed are chipping. We had a brief discussion. Alpine County property tax allocation, we think we got what we are due. And electric rates, we have a project of trying to balance base rates with consumption rates.
Okay.
All early stages.
Okay, thanks. Bertrand, planning.
Didn't meet this week. This week actually. Yeah, we decided to postpone. One of the big discussion would be the will serve propane for future development, and it takes substantial work to prepare, so we postpone.
Okay, thank you. Operations, Peter.
We covered everything, I believe, right? Unless you have something.
No, that's good. Bob, communications.
We have a couple of things. Eric, it's okay if I share screen? I assume?
Yeah, I've muted myself. Yes, you're good. I stopped sharing. You should be good to share.
Okay. So there's one thing I want to show people. This is a graph of days of residency. And so the yellow line represents this year. You can see that in October, there were 5,859 days of residency compared to an average, which includes this year, of 3,400. So you can See, these are the last 6 years, and then you can see what's been happening. So IT put this together. And Bertrand suggested we should try to have more things that are visual, and so this gives you a clear idea of what's happening in those areas. So I just wanted to mention that. Also, in terms of renewables, October was the time to sign up to get that for the previous year. We had a 20% increase in terms of megawatt hours of renewables purchased, and that corresponded to a 40% increase in terms of customer participation.
Wow.
We went from 37 accounts. I didn't check to see whether each account is a unique customer. They probably are, up to 52 accounts was the increase this year.
Okay, that's terrific.
Yeah, and propane was similar. So that was the renewables. The other thing that we're planning on for communications and IT that I want to make sure everybody aware of is that we decided to merge the 2 meetings for November and December into a December 7th meeting. At that meeting, we plan on looking at various ideas of how to recalculate driveway allocations for snow removal. And that can either be used by the HOAs once they decide how they want to do things, assuming we move in that direction. If not, it would be a recommendation for how we would proceed. We were going to do that based on prior years, so we can see how it would affect things. And then assuming, we'll bring that to that December board meeting. And then based on discussion, then we would measure that for the rest of this year, and we'd be in a position to move smoothly into the next fiscal year instead of having a lot of anxiety with very little time to resolve it. So that's what we're trying to move towards. And that's
Bob, with regard to that, will your discussion also at that time include any responses you've gotten from HOAs as far as the driveway procedure goes?
Yes, I had asked Frank Dixon to let me know where things stand, and he said he would have something for me by the end of this coming week.
Okay.
So we could factor that in. I would describe the response so far as a fair amount of silence.
Interesting.
But I don't know if anyone on the call has other information or on this meeting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it'll be we'll get it addressed in our December meeting, is I think what you're saying.
This is Carolyn. The only thing I can say is that I know that Frank is so swamped with stuff regarding the KCA. I don't think he's done anything on this issue. I mean, as president of the Palisades, I haven't heard a word from him about this.
That was my fear. I asked him to contact you and also Juniper Ridge.
Well, nothing's happening.
Yeah,
so I will write him an email and try to push him. He gets so swamped with stuff, then he just ignores. Like the Palisades to him is not very important compared to all those other things of getting the resort ready, yada, yada, yada. So we're always at the bottom of the list.
Well, let me say you're very important to us, so I'd be happy to talk with you if that would be helpful.
Okay, what was the date of this meeting you're talking about?
The meeting for the communications committee will be December 7th.
Okay.
And so we'd like to have everything ready a week before, so anyone who wants to attend it as since it's a public meeting, would have time to look at everything in advance. So I'd say the end of this month is really our deadline that we're working towards.
Okay, well, I was hoping Frank would work on this. I know that there was some data available, but I had hoped he would handle it. So I will try to look at it this week, or maybe we can communicate this week. I have a really open week right now.
All right, I appreciate that. And again, just reach out to me if I can be helpful.
Okay, all right.
I think for KMA viewpoint here, I think KMA is waiting for some data. I think there is an email that has been sent asking some specifics. I'm not sure what exactly. I mean, I could look into it, but I have not. And I think they're on waiting to have a response from the district. So that's what
Yeah, they did send an email
Yeah.
on which you were copied, so I know I know you've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Bob and I talking, we were waiting to get other HOA responses so we could be efficient in our quantitative response.
So
We
basically
will-
KMA is on wait and see. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Meaning it's not very vocal.
Not what?
Not being very vocal yet.
Oh.
Yet.
That's rather ominous.
Anyway, Eric, that's everything for me.
Okay, Bob, thanks very much. Personnel did not meet this past month. Okay, we move on to temporary advisory committee reports. I don't think did we disband the playground committee, Standish?
Not yet.
I don't think we
No.
officially disbanded it, but we
No, you
haven't.
said you wanted to leave it open until the program actually got installed.
Oh, that's right. Okay, good. But I'm assuming nothing's happened at this point.
Correct.
It's starting to get buried in snow. That's what we're reporting.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Equipment
Bob.
is safely stored now, thankfully.
Eric, anything new on the plaque?
No, that nothing new on the plaque.
Okay, I just let the board members know that I've talked briefly and probably the next meeting we'll want to create a temporary advisory committee to look at ideas for the $178,000 OGL grant. Remember, this is for recreation facilities and how we might use that money and how we would apply for that money. So that's something coming up next month. Okay, a general discussion. Any items from the board to ask questions, clarifications, etc.?
Yeah, I'd like to say that this Halloween, we broke an unofficial record for trick-or-treaters. I had 16 kids that come by my house, which is
Oh
an
my
all-time
goodness.
record.
Wow.
Were you prepared?
Yes, I was.
All right.
I had everything pre-wrapped and counted and the lights on and the bull out in front of the house. It was nice to see.
It's awesome.
Terrific. Okay, anything else?
Bertrand?
Yes, I had asked at the previous board meeting about discrepancies between the snow removal driveways contract in the database where we generate the report and the accounting system. So I got both from Bob and Kelly some data. Unfortunately, I cannot reconcile both because they don't have the same identification, so there is no way for correlation. But what I can see is that at that time it was early in the season, so not everything I think was already included in the accounting database. And so my request here is, if I'm assuming now the contract have been settled down for the snow removal for this year, so I'd like to get this data, but I need also some kind of key so I can compare what's coming from the report database of the activities and the accounting. In general, I'm concerned when you have to do data entry by hand. That's my bioinformatics background. So what I'm concerned is it's a source of error. So if we do generate something somewhere and then have to type it in a different system, that's a weakness into our system. And I'm not sure. I didn't want to raise these things earlier, but clearly as an for accounting, auditing, it'll be a concern I have. So basically, I'm asking to get the data, but in a way that I can actually correlate both. And because last time I could not do that. I could only see it was totally different. That's all. That's the only thing I could see. Yeah.
Kelly and Eric, is that request clear to you?
Yes, but what he's asking for doesn't exist. PCS doesn't correlate across the report server. They don't have the same, they don't correlate across the platform. And we still have accounts that still have not put in their check yet, that are not being plowed. So there's still 6 stragglers in driveways. 6 or 5, Rick, I can't remember. So yeah, we don't even have all those yet, but they're not being plowed, or it's not supposed to be being plowed. So
Well, again, if there was a way to correlate between the two systems, we could eliminate these 5 or 6 and still being able to compare. Yeah.
there's not, Bertrand, like I said, there's not the PCS doesn't use the same system. Kelly already dropped off, unfortunately, but the best is the report server, because that's where we enter when we get payment. That's where it gets entered, and that we can provide that data. But again, there's some people that haven't paid yet, so there'll be gaps in that.
Well, at the end, we should see the same number on both. Even if we cannot identify the correlation, the tax sum should be identical is perfect, I mean similar, yeah.
Okay.
And
So-
so far, that's not the case, so that's my concern.
So the
Staff believes they are correct. So I disagree. It's not the case.
well, I think, so can I just clarify what the request is? If I'm understanding is, we have a set of driveway contracts, and then we bill against those contracts, and I guess the request is a report showing how the billings and the payments, I guess, match up to the contracts. Is that it? Is that the
Basically,
request?
no, the request is to get the data so we can verify that the sum of the driveway contracted correspond to what we actually enter in the database, yeah.
Enter the database
Accounting database, yeah.
as contracts or as payments or as both?
Payment.
As payments, yeah, okay. Okay,
We'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
okay. Anything else under general discussion? If not, I think we can adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everybody.
I was almost right, Eric. An hour 38. I said an hour 30.
Oh, I thought you said 2 hours and 30, but you know.
Maybe I did. Ask Sam.
I'm sorry, I could have made it a bit longer.
Yeah, thanks, Bertrand.
He's the source of my 8 minutes over, I think.
Right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you, everybody. This meeting's adjourned.
Bye.